Hi, this is Lit with Chris, and in this video I will be looking at how to analyse an unseen poem that has been translated. This will be particularly useful to you if you're a literature or world literature student. If you'd like to take the text that I use in this video for some independent study, then you'll find it linked in the show notes below. So the very first thing I tend to do is to take a look at the questions provided for any clues about the poem's meaning and message. In any case, it's also a good idea just so that you can identify the main things that the exam is asking you to focus on and analyse. So in this case, our questions are asking, how does the poet use words and images to depict the rain? And how does the poet powerfully convey their message to those in power, or with power, I should say? So the first one gives us a very simplistic hint at what the poem will contain in it, and it mentions rain. So we know we've got to focus on the rain, and we know that the poem will include rain. More significantly, it's asking me to focus on words and images. To me, this can include the likes of metaphor, simile, hyperbole, I guess, personification, symbolism, sensory imagery, maybe, and it also means that the likes of enjambment, caesura are out as their structural devices, whereas alliteration and sibilance and those things are also not welcome, given that they're more sound devices. So as I read through the text later, I'll be sure to keep an eye out for these types of techniques. B suggests that the poem is dealing with the idea of power, or those in power. So those with power, people that have power. So presumably I'm being asked how the writer feels about those in power and what message she is seeking to send them. Are there any restrictions in terms of devices I should mention? No. Okay, let's look at the poem then. So the next step should be to establish what the basic story of the poem is. In other words, what's happening, who is it happening to, and so on. As I do this, I'm going to underline any words that I feel stand out as important. I'm not going to label them or anything just yet, but I can always return to them later. Okay, so here's the poem's title, Rain and the Tyrants. I stand and watch the rain falling in pools which make our grave old planet shine. So grave old planet shine seems significant to me. Grave particularly. Grave old planet shine. So the pools, the puddles, I guess that means, that the rain makes the grave old planet shine. It kind of gives the poem a bit of a sad or solemn tone to begin with, despite the fact that the rain is actually causing the world to shine. Like it's grave and it's old, I guess. Okay, so moving on. The clear rain falling just the same as that which fell in Homer's time and which dropped in Villain's time. In Villain's day, rather. So I've got two footnotes here, 1 and 2, just in case I don't understand either of these two references or words. I can go to the bottom. Number 1, Homer is an ancient Greek poet who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, and Villain is a Villon, I suppose it should be, a French poet from the Middle Ages. So I guess writers from a long time ago, so they might be significant, maybe. So the rain falling on mother and on child as on the passive backs of sheep. Rain saying all it has to say again and yet again and yet, without the power to make less hard the wooden heads of tyrants or to soften their stone hearts. The wooden heads of tyrants or soften their stone hearts. I can understand the stone hearts bit. I do think that's significant. I can understand it. I think they're unfeeling. They don't have any feelings. But wooden heads, that seems significant too. I'm not completely sure what wooden heads refers to. It makes me think of like a mannequin in a shop. So what is she saying here? The tyrants are stupid. The tyrants are not thinking, mindless, perhaps. So the rain is powerless to make them feel amazement as they ought. So this line is particularly tricky. The rain is powerless to make them feel amazement as they ought. So ought, I guess it means it fails to make them feel amazement as they should do. But what exactly should they be amazed at? I'm not sure. A drizzling rain which falls across all Europe's map, wrapping all men alive in the same moist envelope. I think I understand what is meant by the same moist envelope. I think I understand what she's trying to do there, but it seems important. It's quite a vivid image, so I'll underline it as important. Despite the soldiers loading arms, despite the newspapers' alarms. So the soldiers loading arms, I'm assuming arms being like guns and weaponry and things like that. I'm assuming they're getting ready for war. And the newspapers are alarming because they're commenting on it, I guess. They're like making people feel fearful or panicked or picking up on the news in a sensational manner. Despite all this, all that, a shower of drizzling rain making the flags hang wet. So the final line then, making the flags hang wet, seems important. So flags, I guess flags links to the idea of countries and therefore the tyrants that ruled them, I guess. Anyway, returning to the questions. How does the poet use words and images to depict the rain? Well, based on my first reading, feels like the rain is quite like a calm or calming force. It's quite gentle. It's drizzling and stuff. It's not like other images of the rain have it like pounding down or like a monsoon or destructive. It seems quite calming or gentle. It seems to make its impact on the land in a relatively serene way. So I'm going to write serene as well. It doesn't seem to be bothering anyone. Instead, it's sort of bringing beauty to things and tranquility. Brings tranquility. I suppose that means the same thing as calming, though. Yeah. As for B, how does the poet powerfully convey their message to those with power? Well, we get the criticism. We sense the criticism. There is criticism. So the message must be one of criticism. I guess she wants those, like they should be more understanding, more compassionate. I'm just thinking back to the wooden-headed thing. Compassionate. And the stone-hearted thing as well. Maybe they should be amazed. The fact they ought to be amazed or should be amazed, maybe that implies they're ignorant. But ignorant of what exactly? I guess they're ignorant of the rain and the way in which it's been falling for thousands of years. If we look at like the reference to those two kind of ancient writers. And it also continues to fall all over the continent or all over the world maybe. Hence giving, a sense of familiarity. Perhaps the rain could be a reminder of what we've got in common. So criticism, remind them we are all the same, maybe. We all have things in common and that maybe we should stick together rather than fighting wars or causing fear. Now, these are nice ideas, but ultimately I have to back them up with evidence from the text. So, if we are going to say that the rain is gentle, calming, or tranquil phenomenon, then let's find evidence to support it. However, only words or images will do. So I'm going to highlight for A in one color. So I'll do like blue for A, and another color for B. Okay. So this will just ease my planning and writing later on. All right, so we'll reread it. I stand and watch the rain falling in pools, which makes our grow. Okay, so this is the first, I feel, relevant kind of choice from the text that we can talk about to back up this idea of the rain being gentle or calming or tranquil or giving beauty. It's making the grave old planet shine. So it's I suppose, I mean, the first two words might convey the fact that we're surrounded by serious or worrying matters, grave, old. But the rain can come and wash issues or dirt away, and make the place seem a bit more beautiful, like take our troubles away. So I guess this could be oxymoron, shine and grave, or at the very least it's visual imagery. You've got to be careful with visual imagery, but one of those two certainly, I think. Moving on, the clear rain falling. So the clear rain falling, that is a direct description of the rain. Is it useful? Well, we've had the word shine, and now we've got the word clear. We're now developing this sense that the rain brings with it positive qualities. They might boost people's mood. Because, I mean, shine is a beautiful or kind of like eye-catching thing, whereas clear means, understandable, trustworthy. And I suppose maybe like these also stand in contrast to the misery or the lies that some political leaders are being accused of. You then have that which fell in Homer's time, which dropped in villains. I'm not sure that's necessarily related to the depiction of the rain. Falling on mother and child, as on the passive backs of sheep. Okay, that might be relevant. I don't see it initially. Rain saying all it has to say, again and yet without the power. Okay, so this personification here, rain saying all it has to say, and without the power. Does this mean it's speaking up in some way or standing up for our rights? If that's the case, then maybe we need to add that to our response to the question on the other side. Is the rain standing up for us? It's trying to speak out. That personification would seem to suggest. Saying all it has to say again and yet again. So it's trying, it's persevering. You got some repetition there. I think that still falls under words and images. The word is being repeated. Repetition should go there. Again and yet again. So it's persevering. It's persevering. I'm going to add that to my thesis as well. Without the power, though, to make less hard the heads of tyrants. So it's perseverant, and yet it's ultimately powerless to make them feel anything. So might the rain be us? Or good people who stand up to tyrants? They're ultimately powerless, but nevertheless they persevere in trying to make the world a better place. The rest of it starts to talk about tyrants, so I feel like this is more related to B. But you then do get this word here, drizzling. A drizzling rain which falls. And this is repeated at the end of the poem as well, a shower of drizzling rain. Drizzling is a relatively harmless and subtle action, I would argue. So harmless, subtle, drizzling. Is it tactile imagery? Maybe. But you wouldn't be too bothered if you were caught in drizzling rain, because it's not going to soak you through or anything like that. So I'm starting to wonder whether the rain is actually an extended metaphor for the normal people of the world. Is the rain an extended metaphor for us? We've always been around. We are everywhere on the world, and we're persevering. Some people are persevering in the face of injustice, but ultimately we're powerless against tyrants. It's an interesting theory. So, returning to the question then, based on the quotes I've got, I think I can support a thesis statement that states that the rain is supposed to be sort of calming. I think calming I can put in. I think it's gentle. I think I can support that. But one that seems to be trying to use its meagre influence to affect the world in a better way. Yeah, so calming, gentle, maybe standing up for us. Maybe it's an extended metaphor for us. But we could also make use of some tentative language in the thesis statement by saying that maybe the author is suggesting that the rain is like activists trying to change the world despite their lack of power. Okay, so moving on to B and perhaps another colour. Maybe I'll do B in pink. I just need to remind myself that all the types of poetic devices, yes, are available to me. And so if that's the case, limiting it just to the likes of imagery, metaphor, simile, things like that would probably be a bad idea. There is not much in the initial elements of the poem that would be relevant to this question. You could maybe bring in the allusions to Homer and Villon and sort of try to show how the writer's trying to educate tyrants into understanding that, human beings have been around for a long, long time, and we probably have more in common with each other based on that shared history than we do differences. So, wars are silly. But the first mention of the tyrants themselves is here, the wooden heads of tyrants and stone hearts. So we've already mentioned the fact that these are metaphors. And this would directly support our idea that maybe the writer's trying to point out to tyrants how stupid they're being, how cold-hearted they're being, how unhumane they're being, maybe. So undoubtedly the writer sees these people as out of touch, lacking in empathy. But she also seems to be hoping to draw the tyrant's attention to the fact that the rain falls across the map, or all Europe's map. Which is here, a drizzling rain which falls across all Europe's map. And so symbolically, I guess this means that the rain is common to everywhere. The rain is shared by everyone in a way. And it doesn't recognize borders and boundaries as tyrants. And tyrants would probably do well to remember that those borders or boundaries are artificial lines anyway. This is also aided by the fact that the two lines use enjambment. So the fact that there's no punctuation here means that it's enjambment. And as that's the case, maybe this may mirror the fact that the line's ongoing, may mirror the ongoing rain. Just falls and falls, no matter where it is on the continent. It's an ongoing kind of phenomenon that everyone experiences. The moist envelope thing that wraps all the men alive, like the rain is like a moist envelope there. It's a little bit enigmatic. I mean, envelopes are small and compact, so maybe sort of an extension of idea that we're actually a lot closer than we are led to believe by those who are trying to divide us, perhaps. You then get these two lines: despite the soldiers loading arms, despite the newspapers' alarms. And these two lines stand out by virtue of the fact that they rhyme. Oh, yes. In a poem where not many of the lines seem to have a relationship with each other, these two stand out in contrast. It could connote the idea that the wars that the tyrants have started lead to the soldiers losing their lives, and the public constantly feeling fear due to, thanks to the mass media that reports on it. Hence, maybe the writer's urging the tyrants to remember our common humanity and prevent these petty squabbles from happening. The final image then, let's write down rhyme there, or rhyming couplet, it should be. The final image then, making the flags hang wet. Clearly that's a symbol. I mean, the flags are clearly a symbol for, in some way. Maybe it's commenting on the fact that although we have artificially separated ourselves by forming countries and therefore allegiances, there are still some things out there that remind us of our shared humanity, i.e. the elements of nature, which in this case, the rain, kind of making a mockery of the flag by lightly soaking it in rain and preventing it from flying. So I could say the symbol, is it mocking? Maybe. Mocking the idea of kind of nationality or patriotism. So returning to the question, there's not much I would change from my original notes. which for me will probably help to develop a reasonably good thesis. I mean, you've got criticism. She wants them to be more understanding and compassionate. She's showing that they're ignorant and reminding them that we are all the same. I think that's the making of a good thesis statement. Now, before we talk about our own structure, let's talk about the poets. Ordinarily, these unseen poems tend to be free verse. So the practice of writing in strict forms, such as a sonnet or villanelle, has sadly fallen out of fashion in the last 100 years. So chances are you will be given a poem that is more or less free verse. Nevertheless, it does sometimes pay off to consider the ways in which the poet has structured the overall poem and see if we can link it to one or both of the answers that we've been given. In this case, the poem has like one long stanza. It's one long stanza. There's no separate sections. We could make a stretch and say that one stanza equals continuous fall or influence of rain that we all have in common. We could say that, if we really wanted to include that and we felt like it was related to either A or B, then that would be fine. In this case, A isn't asking for structure. So actually we wouldn't use it in this particular one. But don't feel the need to include these things because you must. Yes, at the end you can look at the overall form and ask yourself, is there a meter? Is there a rhyme scheme? What are the stanzas doing? And if you can meaningfully connect it to your thesis statement as developed as it is now, then great. If you can't, then rely on the more individual elements. I mean, this poem's meter and rhymes are inconsistent, which again, we could link to the message in some way, but not in any obvious manner that occurs to me at the moment. Instead, it seems more pressing to comment on the individual choices explored earlier in the video as a priority. So from here, I can now decide which quotes I want to go where in the essay, paying close attention to which colour applies to which question. I've just got to remember that blue is for my A and pink is for my B. If I mess them up, then it's a silly mistake and I may end up losing marks. It may make sense to group similar devices together. So for the blues, I've got imagery, I've got personification, I've got metaphors, I've got quite a few symbols, I've got repetition of drizzling, I've got repetition of again and yet again. So I could do it by devices, or I could just do it chronologically. I could look at this choice, then 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 this choice. Go with a method that will allow you to talk about each of the choices in depth and in relation to the questions as given. That's the only consideration you need to make. Don't forget that if you do want some more independent study and you want access to the poem that I've used in this video, you will find it in the show notes below. If you found this video useful and would like more content like it, then please consider subscribing and liking via the links below. That's all for this time. Thank you very much for watching and goodbye.